Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 106 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined, as always, by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans.
Hello, everybody. So we are coming to you on a Tuesday evening this week to discuss Nebraska's game against Illinois and their upcoming game against Fordham. This was week 0 of college football, as they refer to it, so there weren't really that many big games to talk about, but we'll get more into that in the weeks to come on the national side of things. But before we get into that, we're going to do our tradition of cracking a beverage before we start our podcast. And yes. I think all Nebraska fans could use a drink right now, so this is appropriate.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So what are you drinking, buddy?
I have here a Sapporo, which is a Japanese beer that you may have had when you were visiting Olivia in Tokyo.
I do remember that beer. Yes.
Yeah, I had it there and I quite liked it.
I am drinking a Bell's Oberon, which has, actually become quite well known, not just in, Michigan and the Midwest, but even further out. It's a beer they generally only make for the summer. So it's kind of a summer beer made by Bell's Brewing right here in the state of Michigan.
Mm-hmm. All right. Cheers.
Cheers. There we go. There we go.
All right.
All righty. And I happen to be sitting in Traverse City State Park, right in our hometown here. We're camping, right in our hometown, but right on Lake Michigan. It's a gorgeous spot, really a beautiful view and a beach. And I'm sitting at the fire.
All right. Look at you.
Yeah.
I'm just in my bedroom as always, but that's how it goes. Getting the good audio here.
Yeah, my good audio includes, nature.
There you go. All right. So talking about this Illinois game, as usual, we will start with what our predictions were from the last podcast. We, of course, predicted a Nebraska victory over Illinois. You predicted a little bit more high scoring, saying it was going to be 41-34, and I predicted 35-31, slightly lower scoring. And then the final score ended up being 30-22, so a little bit lower scoring than either of us thought. It turned into a combination of kind of a defensive battle of both sides, as well as costly mistakes leading to easy points.
Right. I would agree with both of those statements.
Yes. And it should be noted that you actually were working on Saturday, so you were only catching the game in snippets.
I was listening a little bit on the radio. I was picking up some updates, from Twitter and things like that as I was driving for a tour, the commitment that I made, not thinking that I'm an idiot. Well, I'm an idiot. That's all. That's all anybody needs to know is that I'm an idiot, and I doubled up. So, but probably good for me as far as my heart condition that I didn't watch it live.
Yes. Well, it was funny because there was also a Smash Brothers tournament that weekend, which I'm a fan of as a video game guy. And so I had it kind of set up where I had Nebraska on the big screen and then Smash on my laptop, so I could kind of multitask a bit.
Yes.
And then, but after how the first half ended, which was with Martinez's fumble that led to a quick touchdown by Illinois, yeah. I swapped that scenario where Smash was on the big TV, Nebraska was on the laptop, so I could easily look away when I got too disgusted to watch.
Yep, I get it.
Yeah. But when you were watching the game, early on, in the first quarter and then into the second, both teams were kind of slow to start, 3 and outs kind of on both sides of the ball as both offenses were kind of struggling to get going. But, they were the ones actually who had some penalties early on. Like I recall, there was a kickoff return which went to like the 40 or 50-yard line and then got called back because of like a holding call. And so then they, had to start like back on the 25 or something like that, so early on we hadn't made any penalties and they were the ones kind of making some mistakes, and we managed to score a touchdown. So I believe the score was 9-2 at that
Correct.
point in the second quarter before
yeah.
the interception that we got that then got called back by 2 penalties, which I think was the momentum shifter of the whole game. Absolutely. Right there.
Well, and actually both penalties were on the same player. They were both on our outside linebacker, number 2. And somehow some people thought that was Martinez. And so that I got a Twitter comment saying Martinez was the one. I'm thinking, what the hell was he saying on the sidelines that would have caused him to get a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty? What's in his head? So I was particularly angry with Adrian because I was thinking he was the one that was guilty of doing that. But in fact, they were both, oh gosh, his name is escaping me now. I'm just so frustrated. Number 2, he's from Georgia. Anyway, he actually had a great tackle on the quarterback, as far as I'm concerned. And in 2000, let's say 5 or 6 and before, that would have been a highlight play that would have been replayed on ESPN and had been used by coaches to say, this is a perfect form tackle of a quarterback. Okay. But now it's excessive roughness, and it's personal foul. And it did end up doing something to the shoulder of the quarterback for Illinois, and probably hurt us in a couple of ways. Obviously, number one, there was that 30 yards of penalties that flipped the field and was huge in their ability to score right then. But it was equally important in that we took out Peters and they put in their backup. Well, when they did that, they really simplified their game plan and just started pounding the rock at us.
Well,
up until that time,
I was
Peters
say,
was throwing it.
You're actually, I think you're mixing things up a bit, because when Peters got hit and went out, their first team quarterback, that wasn't the personal foul penalty. That was earlier in the game, so by this point they were already playing their second team guy. Cause I distinctly remember, cause the guy released the ball and our guy got there, and it was a legal tackle, but I think what the refs didn't like was that he, forced his full body weight down and, drilled him into the ground.
He did. See, I'm pretty sure that was Peters, but maybe it was Sitkowski and he survived that. Huh? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to believe you because I have no reason not to.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure on that.
But bottom line, it was, I'm pretty sure I am right about the player, and that's why he got both penalties.
Right.
Because he said something unsportsmanlike after he made the tackle.
Right. And I think the commentators got confused too, because I also had thought that was Adrian who got called for the taunting, but they didn't show anything, so it was a confusing situation. But what's funny was that I was re-listening to our previous podcast, episode 105, where we were talking about the lead up to the game, and you specifically mentioned our game against Purdue in the 2020 season, where we got an important 3-and-out against, or not 3-and-out, but a third down stop against Purdue. They were going to punt the ball, except then on that play there were 2 penalties against us for 30 yards, that then flipped the field and they ended up scoring or whatever. And you're like, we can't let that happen again. Well, we let it happen again, and it was even worse because it was an interception that got taken away.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you could write a script and just say, push the repeat button, and that's what Nebraska does with Coach Frost as the coach and his coaching staff. It's really remarkable to me how consistently they make mistakes. And I say they, in that I mean the coaches. They just put these guys in bad situations and they make bad choices. I mean, at some point you have to acknowledge that, certain players are not primetime players. They're not the guys that are going to step up when you need them most. they're gonna find a way to crumble. And Adrian is one of those guys. I mean, in this game, countless occasions. The first one being, of course, the wide open receiver for a touchdown who gets overthrown, right? And then when we're actually starting to build some momentum where we might be able to get ourselves back in the game, where we still had enough time to do something about it, he makes another bonehead decision where he's running. All he has to do is put his foot in the ground and turn upfield, and he gets a first down. Instead, he keeps running sideways, ends up getting tackled before the first down marker when he was literally within a yard of the first down marker. If he just puts his foot in the ground and falls forward, he gets a first down. That's all he had to do.
Yep.
But instead, he thought he would be able to run to the outside or something and get more yards. I don't know, but you get the goddamn first down. Okay, somebody who understands what they're doing gets that, right?
Yep.
But Adrian seems to make the absolute worst decision at the worst possible time. Of course, the fumble. When he did have the fumble there late in the first half. Again, you can't keep doing that stuff and expect to win football games. And yet we have no backup. We have no legitimate Power 5 proven backup quarterback. Yeah. Our two backups are both basically freshmen who've never played.
Right. And yeah, I remember that specific play you're talking about where Martinez could have fallen forward for the first down and didn't. And in his defense, on the case of the fumble, it was one of those weird situations where he was going to pass, the pocket was breaking down, and he was transitioning from pass to run. And then as that was happening, some guy hit him from behind and popped the football out.
And that goes back to him being a slow decision maker. He's always just a little bit, and even when he's in the pocket and he wants to scramble, if he's decisive and when he makes the decision to go, he just goes, he does well many times. But it's amazing how often when he makes that decision to leave, he starts looking around to say, where's the hole? Instead of just tucking it and go, again, trying to make the best decision rather than a good decision. And someone, when he was a freshman, should have been able to coach him and say, what do you want? If you're always going to try to seek the absolute best decision, you're going to be frozen in your decision making. You're going to have analysis paralysis. Okay? You need to simplify your analysis process. If you see even a little bit of an opening, take it. Get what you can and move on to the next play. Make sure it's positive. Okay? Be decisive. He is not. He sits there and dances around and then ends up, making 3 yards when if he had just made the decision promptly, number one, he would have made way more yards running. And I think he's less likely to have this come from the backside, surprise tackle shit that he gets into almost every game. Mm-hmm. So again, the decision, though, is about Scott Frost and his staff not having a backup. Okay. They could have gone to the portal this past year more than ever before with the portal. There were quarterbacks that were available that they could have much more aggressively than they did, recruited with the idea that they would have had a legitimate Power 5 backup quarterback, and they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and from what we discussed on the spring game, I'm blanking on his name, but our second team guy right now, he's another one of these quarterbacks. Smothers. Yeah, he's another one of these quarterbacks that looks like a good athlete. Can really run the ball, physical guy, but can't throw it consistently. And
right.
That's what we've had for
12 years.
12 years, pretty much. Yeah. And
yep.
I know the formula hasn't worked out so far.
Well, and again, our defense has the same weakness that it's had for quite a while. We actually looked pretty darn good at times in the game last Saturday. Our guys were being aggressive. They were trying hard. There wasn't an issue of effort, but the bottom line is they don't know or have not been properly coached on how to defend the run and to make sure that somebody can't just line up and smash you and get 4 yards a carry, which is what once Illinois figured out that they could do that, the game was effectively over. then they were able to control the clock a great deal, and they just pounded the rock
Right.
once they got their lead.
I when we were discussing the game this past weekend, and I told you that you should watch at least parts of the game, recorded, so you could see some of the good stuff that was there. And one of the highlights that I did appreciate was that our defensive line was getting some serious push against their offensive line, which we talked in the previous podcast about how many returning starters they had on that offensive line. We got 3 sacks. Some batted down passes, the interception that would have been, a great play if it had actually been able to stand. So to me, it's the same thing I've been saying the whole time with Scott Frost. The defense has serious problems. They let some big plays get by them, they shouldn't have.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, they were generally doing what they needed to do. If the offense would just stop, putting them in terrible situations, terrible field positions,
special team,
and then just giving the opposing team free points, like with the fumble or with the safety by Cam Taylor-Britt.
Right, exactly. I mean, that safety by Cam Taylor-Britt is inexcusable for a senior. Right, or a junior. I guess he's officially a junior, but I mean, for an experienced player who's in his 3rd year as a starter, for him to do that is unthinkable. Okay, a high school team, their players know not to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then he throws the ball out of bounds in that situation, rather than just once he had made the mistake, just do everything you can to lean forward and avoid the safety. But instead, he flings the ball out of bounds, and thinking somehow that's going to work, which it's not.
Right. So, well, and that's one of those areas where we see the absence of Wan'Dale Robinson, because he was our kickoff guy.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This is special teams, an area that Coach Frost had identified and highlighted and said this was going to be a focus of ours in the spring and in fall camp, that we were going to get better there, because it was clearly an area that was unacceptably bad last year. And what do we get for special teams in the first game after all this supposed focus and effort by the coaches to get these guys to do the right things? We have one of our leaders, our captains, make that bonehead decision that we just described, right? The safety. We have our only all-conference player, our field goal kicker, miss 2 extra points during the game, plus our punter, who's a new punter, I will concede, but we recruited and had walk-on tryouts of umpteen punters, and we have a guy that's from freaking Australia who's here, and he kicks the ball for 26 yards. Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, they flipped the field on us multiple times in that game. Now, they have an All-American punter, and he is phenomenal. I mean, he put us inside the 10-yard, on the 1-yard line once, and the 9-yard line another time. I mean, he was absolutely phenomenal. And their kicker kicked it out of the end zone, never gave us a chance to do anything in terms of the kicking game. So, I mean, that's a sound football team. That football team is not going to be super successful because you hit on it. Their offensive line, even though it has all those starts, really struggled to keep us out. And I don't know that we're very good along the defensive line, especially when it comes to pressure. And yet we look like we were for parts of that game. But I think they will be able to run the ball effectively. I think they're going to be a team that will grind. And if they don't get behind, if teams aren't able to be explosive and basically pull them out of their running attack because they fall behind, then that's a team that can win some football games based on their running game and their outstanding kicking game.
Yeah. And you might recall near the end of the game, they scored and then had a personal foul penalty that pushed back the kickoff by 15 yards.
Right.
And the guy still kicked it into the end zone, which I thought was like, wow, that's impressive.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just craziness. That's stupid.
So yeah. The discrepancy on special teams was very evident.
It's enormous.
They missed one field goal. I had kind of forgotten about that.
He did.
But it was a 55-yarder, so that's going to be hard for anybody. And then our guy, Connor Culp, made the field goal that he needed to
He
make.
did.
He just
He
missed
did.
the extra points that should be way easier,
Right.
And it was funny because the commentators literally said the Big Ten kicker of the year last year, and then he misses the extra point. It was like comical almost.
Yes. Exactly.
And then also talking about Adrian, some points, it's those constant points of frustration because, like you say, Adrian missed that guy who was blatantly open in the end zone, some other guys that were open later in the game, and he just kept overthrowing them.
Right.
But then literally the play after that missed thing to the end zone, he did this flick of the ball like 9 yards to the side. Pitch
play.
Pitch play, to our guy that got us, a solid gain of like 6 yards or something like that. And the commentators were like, well, that's like 10 times harder than the throw that he just missed, to the end zone. So how does he do that? And then also later on the game, he had a throw to a guy who was covered pretty well by the Illinois guy, and our receiver made a great catch. Adrian was right on point. It was like a 40, 50 yard, pass. And it was like, well, that was great. But he's, the inconsistency is still there. I saw that he seemed like he was more willing to stand still in the pocket, and not scramble out as quickly, which is something I've criticized him for in the past. So I was glad to see that adaptation. But like you say, he was still slow on making his progressions through his receivers.
And I would absolutely, and he locks on too. I mean, like he only sees half the field usually. Like if he's looking left, you never see his helmet turn to the other way. And again, we have a lot of talented receivers supposedly, but none of them could create separation. None of them could get open, which just blows me away that either our route combinations are so easily scouted by the defenses that we're playing against that they're able to prepare for us and just, cover us like a blanket. Or our guys aren't trying hard enough, or because of the way we practice, which is what this is the real point that I think is because of the way we practice, our guys come into a game. Oh, there was another great one. Okay, we had a great pass completion that was called back because of a pass the pick play. Well, guess what? That is a play that is a rub route that is designed to have that collision or that contact occur between the other wide receiver and a defensive back. That's the whole point of all these damn route patterns that they do. But you know what? Our receiver was surprised because I'm sure in practice, so that they don't run into each other every time. What is our defensive back doing? Because he knows our offensive scheme. He's avoiding that contact, right? He's going around it, right? Because he knows where it's coming. He knows the route combination. Well, that defensive back for Illinois didn't necessarily do that. He ran right through it, right? He ran into it. And our receiver, rather than doing what he was supposed to, which was to look back to the quarterback and act like he was running a route and just have the contact, that's what you have to do. Then the flag doesn't get thrown. Then it's just incidental contact. If he doesn't put his arms up, Alex, and he's looking back at the quarterback, that doesn't get called. But because he put his arms up to protect himself on that collision, it's a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's because that's how they practice. The way they practice, he's not running into that guy. The way they practice, they're not asking them to have that that physical contact. They're avoiding that contact.
Yeah. I was just thinking that that pass play to the end zone where the guy was wide open they were talking about earlier, that was also one of those rub routes, because I remember on the replay
it was
the commentators noticed that they were like, ooh, that one was on the edge in terms of like its legality or whatever.
Oh, there's a lot of our routes that are like that. But my point is that receiver made a huge mistake. And again, I think it's because of how we practice, that he wasn't prepared for the physicality of that collision. And you have to play your part. You have to be the actor, okay, in that situation, as no matter what the result is.
Yeah. Which
might include you getting your bell rung, right? Because you're basically going into contact unprotected. You can't put your arms up, even though you know it's coming. Mm-hmm. You have to be looking back at the quarterback like you're on a route.
Right.
and he didn't do it. And that was a 44-yard completion,
Yep.
and
Nope.
would have flipped the field for us. And we ended up having a running play for nothing or something, and then a 7-yard sack, and we had to punt.
Yep. No, that was another momentum turner. I remember that in the game.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
Speaking about injuries, obviously, you don't want to ever celebrate a player's injury, but I was obviously happy when our guy sacked their first team quarterback, and then he went out with that shoulder injury, and it was a pretty serious one because he went to the locker room and took off his pads and everything else. They had a couple guys go down over the course of the game, as
They
well
did.
as two umpires, which I've never seen before in my
Right.
years of watching college football. Meanwhile, I don't think we had any guys go down during the course of the game.
Well, I think we had some guys that got hurt and then just never returned, but they didn't it didn't happen on a play where they had to be helped off the field.
Right.
But we did have some injuries to one of our inside linebackers. I noticed that while I was watching it on the replay. But the other thing I would say is that's actually going to hurt them. That Illinois team, which was already kind of questionably good, right?
Right.
Even though they have 42 seniors. I mean, they're a mature team. They're a physical team. And with Coach Belima understands how to win football games. It's the game within the game is what that they refer to that as, right? Like you're just trying to do the little things now that you're into the second quarter, you're making adjustments, you're saying, okay, what can I do well? And then even like late in the game, like you said, when that second referee went down, there was no referee now in the middle of the field because they didn't have a third, they only have one alternate. So once that guy went down, there wasn't another alternate behind him. So they just finished the game off with one less official. So now all the officials had to pick up the additional duty of looking in the middle, which was where offensive linemen and defensive linemen are. So holding was way more prevalent and available to you as an offensive strategy from the moment that guy left the field. Okay. Mm-hmm. Did we take advantage of that? I don't think so. I couldn't tell a whole lot. Did they? You're damn right they did. Okay. And again, that's well coached. That's a team that understands that no one's looking, so I can cheat a little more. I can be a little more aggressive with my holding and make sure that I get this guy leveraged so that I can have a block, But did we do that? No. Did our coaches even talk to our offensive line about it? I don't know. I would question whether that was even discussed.
Right.
I would love to know if that was even discussed.
Yeah, and I did think about that when that second umpire went down too. How does that change like the meta of the situation?
Right.
And then sadly, this is another game where when you look at the stats, we were better than them on most stats, not by much, but we had 160 rushing yards, they had 167. We were 232 on passing, they were 159. So that left us with 392 total offense to their 326. And we had 3 sacks, they had 5 on us. We were 5 of 14 on third downs, they were 6 of 13. But then you look at the big one is time of possession, right? They were 35 minutes to our 25.
Exactly. And that's a bugaboo of the Scott Frost era.
And they did have one fumble and we had one fumble, but our fumble was an immediate, easy touchdown.
Yep.
Whereas with their fumble,
open score,
I think that might be the one where we went and got a field goal. I'm not 100% on what we did with that turnover. But
I don't remember that.
Yeah, but so the final verdict basically from the game was that sadly it looked just like last year's team. Some improvement in some areas. Some bits.
The glimpses. Yeah, there are glimpses, Alex, that we could be a good football team. Our defensive line is going to be solid. I think our linebackers showed that they were probably better than people might have thought. We already knew our secondary was going to be pretty good, and I thought the secondary in general played really well. Solid football. They didn't get the turnovers that I would have hoped for, but they played solid football. So defensively, it's a team that looks like we could do okay. The one Achilles heel that still exists and that's going to come and rear its ugly head this whole season, is our inability to stop the run. When someone is going to run the football because they have a lead, and you know they're going to primarily be running the football, you have to be able to bow your necks, get tough, and stop them. Because now you know what they're going to do, right? So the element of surprise to some extent is diminished a little bit, right? And you need to find a way to stop that. What did we do after we had that negative thing happen with the scoop and score there late in the half? So we end up going in not tied, but down, what was it, 16-9?
Yep.
What did we do at the beginning of the third quarter? We gave up a 14 play, 7.5, 8-minute drive and another score.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
Right.
How do you allow that to happen if you're a good defense? So all the stuff, all the statistics and stuff that you described earlier that says, hey, you know what? We played okay defensively. You did, except for when I needed you to step up and make a stand, you were unable to do it. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's huge.
Well, and to the defense's credit, near the end of the game, there was that whole sequence where we scored. It was a long, start and stop kind of drive, but we did score. Then the defense got the ball. They got one first down, which obviously we would have liked to avoid, but the defense did stop them from getting the second first down. So we got the ball back with like a minute left, and we had a chance to, do something with it. But even at that point, we were down 8 points. So even if we had gone down there and scored, we would have had to get 2 just to go into overtime because of those missed extra points and the safety and all that.
That would have been great if we could have done that. But again, why that previous drive, you're right. That drive was impressive in that it was like 19 plays.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've had many offensive drives that were more than 19 plays in quantity of plays. Right. But part of that was because, again, I think we had a penalty, at least one in that sequence too, that we had to overcome. And then inexplicably, there were some opportunities that were missed by Adrian in that sequence that would have allowed us to maybe score sooner. And then we finally get down inside the 5-yard line, and time is a factor, and we run it into the gut 2 times. We run 2 plays where we're running the ball basically right at them. 2 plays in a row, and we get virtually nothing. And then we end up throwing a little flip pass on the third play, and we get the touchdown. But we wasted all the time associated with 2 running plays. When the one time I want Scott Frost to throw the football, he runs it up the gut with the most mundane, basic bullshit twice in a row. That's not the time to set up that third down little flip pass. I'm sorry, you needed to have already had that set up, right? If that's right. What you were trying to do. I mean, that's crazy.
I actually have the play-by-play from ESPN up here reminding me. So it ended up being 4th and goal at the Illinois 4, and that's where we scored. And you might remember that was also our snapping from our center had looked good the whole game up until this crucial drive, and one goes way over Adrian's head and sets us back like 20 yards, and it was like Jesus Christ. Well,
and amazingly, Adrian didn't recover that ball.
Yep.
He should have, but he turned around. As athletic as he is, how does he not? And as many times as that's happened to him, how does he not do
He's
that?
Practiced.
And again, as a senior, what does he do? Does he fall on it just to secure the ball? Because possession is the ultimate at that point. What does he try to do? He tries to pick it up rather than diving and curling up like you're supposed to just secure the ball again. Accept that a negative play has happened. Let's regroup and try again on the next play. Nope. Adrian, in his infinite wisdom, thinks it's the right decision to try to pick it up and continue the play. Now, why would you do that? God, you got to believe that he's been coached not to do that. And if he hasn't been coached not to do that by our coaches, again, that's on the coaches. How could you not know that was what you should do? But he didn't. He tried to pick it up, and somebody else came and actually recovered the ball. It wasn't Adrian.
Yes.
These are things that I see that cause me to just freak out as a guy who coached high school football because they're things that my high school players knew. You
Hmm.
see, it makes no sense to me that that they would do that. And again, that's an Adrian in a crisis situation, critical play, the most important plays of the game, and almost every time his decision is wrong.
Yep. But
It's just amazing when someone's under pressure. You have two choices. How often do you make the right one? Adrian makes the wrong one a lot.
right. Well, you may remember at the beginning of at the early in the second half, they got another touchdown, which puts them up 39 over us when they got that with like a big pass play helped them out there. So now we're down
Right,
21 points in the third quarter, and it's really looking bad. And then we get the ball, and Adrian breaks out our run for 75 yards for a
yeah,
touchdown, and brings us
spectacular.
back to 14. So there was a
Right,
moment where I was really feeling like, oh God, the game is over. And then he got that, and it's like, okay, we're
right,
back in it. We're competitive still. So
right.
Adrian still has,
But
that go
but again,
factor to him.
he
But
does. But that wasn't a critical play. That at that point, most people are saying this game's over. The pressure's off. It's like the defense relaxed a little bit. In fact, the commentators went on at length about that they were like, "Oh, this was the one thing Illinois couldn't do, and if you just relax even a little bit, then Adrian's going to make you pay." And he did. But the point is that Adrian can do that in a play. And you know what was special about that play? He was decisive. When he decided to tuck it and go, he was decisive. He didn't dance around and try to find the hole. He just took off. Okay. And he put it on the afterburners. That was a beautiful run, no doubt. And again, that's the athleticism of his teasing you. But his decision making, his brain is not what's going to lead us to great success consistently unless he stops making these bad decisions that are so fundamentally basic. That's the part that's so frustrating to me.
yep.
Darn it.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree. So talking about the post game, I didn't watch the interviews with Frost, but I saw some of the highlights of his comments afterwards, and
Yes.
as well as like his. I think they talked to him after the practice on Monday, and two highlights from what I saw were that he basically said, "I don't know what more we could have done to like prepare the team for this game." And then he also mentioned half our game plan went out the window when they lined up how they did, in reference to the defense, which may be the honest truth of how he feels. But man, it doesn't sound bad.
No, it sounds awful. And you're right. He probably did feel that way. He was being honest. He was saying, "Man, we had tried to anticipate everything they might do. They had probably spent the whole summer, combing over all the assistant coaches from that Belima had brought in, and figured out what their histories were and stuff to find out what the tendencies were likely to do." But you'll recall what I said in an earlier podcast. I don't think it was the last one, but in a recent podcast, we were talking about Illinois and specifically about the point that Illinois had a new coach and new coaches, right? And I said, well, it was amazing to me that he had been able to talk 22, seniors into staying, and ends up with 22 super seniors and 42 or 45 total seniors on his team. Tons of maturity, et cetera, et cetera. Amazing feat by that coach, right? Well, if I had that much maturity in seniors, what would I do? I would probably try to change as little as possible early in the season. Yes, I'm coaching my kids on my future concepts of what kind of offense and defensive schemes I want to play, but I would be finding out what they coached last year with the previous staff, and I would be trying to keep as much of that basically in place as I could, adding a couple of wrinkles that don't put a lot of mental burden on those very senior laden kids, and let them just play and do what they already have muscle memory to do. And I think that's what Belima did.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it makes a certain amount of sense. And then our offensive coordinator, I believe today, Matt Lubick, said that the staff had talked internally about Illinois coming on with an even front and had a separate call sheet prepared for that. So kind of counteracting a little bit the idea that, half the game plan went out the window when they lined up that way. But my thought process when I first read that quote was, even if that's true, even if they took you by surprise, you have time to adapt. That's what the whole halftime is for, right? And our favorite coach, Tom Osborne, was well known for being good at making halftime adjustments.
Right.
So how are you so incapable of that? Because like you say, they came out in the second half, scored 2 touchdowns quickly, and we did squat.
Exactly. Now, I will concede, their that pass play that you talked about earlier that Illinois had, that Sikowski threw to his receiver down to the 1, that was an incredible pass. He was well defended. Our defense was exactly doing what they were supposed to do. That was just a spectacular pass and catch. That's all that was. But here's the thing. That was a guy who was a defensive back like 3 weeks ago who made that catch. Okay? So they're able to switch a guy who they see as an athlete and they say, you know what? You're not going to be starting at defensive back because we have all these other guys. But, man, you're too good of an athlete to have on the sidelines. Let's bring you over to wide receiver and see what you can do and see if you can help us more quickly there, right? And we have the JUCO number 1, recruit in all of JUCO, Omar Manning, and he gets 1 pass thrown to him the whole game, and he's not even starting. You know what I mean? Like he's in a rotation and he hardly sees the field and doesn't get passes thrown to him. How can you not be featuring that guy? Even if it's just 3 or 4 plays. If he's having struggling to understand the playbook, then you shorten the playbook for him and you put him in only in certain plays, but you give him the ball. You find ways for that guy to be the man, right? Because he's such a freak athlete. Did we do that for him or Betts or any of our talented wide receivers that we've been hearing about for the entire offseason? Nope, none of them. Torre was probably the only one, he got, 2 or 3 catches. But that was it. Otherwise, we were throwing the ball the walk-ons.
Martin actually got the most yards on the team.
Yeah, Martin's not a walk-on, but he's a transfer. But again, Oliver Martin is the real deal. But Lure was the one that we threw to in the end zone that we overthrew. Okay. Mm-hmm. We have a 6'9" tight end who played really well late last season, and we only got him the ball 1 time, and we overthrew him. How do you overthrow a 6'9"
I was remembering that. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Admittedly, there was wind was a factor in this game because the kicking when you were in the wind versus against the wind was definitely noticeable, the difference. But still, once again, this is Adrian as a 4th year, senior player. You've played enough games, you should know how to adjust your pass. When the wind's at your back or whatever.
Exactly. So again, I'm beating a dead horse, but summary: poorly coached, not prepared. Blame this on the coaches.
Right. And
you look at the athletes. We clearly have some athletes. We have some players on our team. I mean, it's promising when I see the individual plays. Mm-hmm. What's not promising is I don't think we have the mental fortitude or toughness to stop a running game. And on the defensive side and offensively, we're a mess from a coaching standpoint. Yeah. Special teams, we're a mess.
Well, you want to hear a depressing stat?
Okay, sure.
This comparison isn't quite fair because Scott hasn't had his 4th year yet, and one of his years was a COVID year with less games. But by the end of his 4th year, Bill Callahan was 27-22, and right now Scott Frost is 12-21. So he's one loss away from as many as Bill Callahan in his 4 years.
I know. And we were ready to run him out on a rail at that point.
Yeah.
Now, Scott inherited a different situation than Bill Callahan did, in my opinion.
Yes.
So it's hard to compare those types of situations. But there's no doubt, and I mean, even this game, I mean, bizarro world stuff happening again that just is inexplicable. Like a 4th year player, catching a punt in the end zone and getting a safety. I mean, the kind of mental errors that are just so off the wall crazy that you just can't believe one team could do all those things to screw themselves.
Right.
And yet we do it.
And I'll concede to Scott's credit that, like, a few of the games over the course of his career can be surmounted to, like, bad luck. Like they had a drive at the end of the game, that won him the game off of some weird, mistake. But there's too much bad luck for it to just be bad luck. Like no team, continually makes this many mistakes, for no reason.
Right. Well, and the penalties too. I mean, at some point you've got to question how you're coaching your guys in terms of their blocking technique and stuff when you get all these holding calls and when the other team doesn't. I mean, Scott Frost was losing his shit in that game late in the fourth quarter on that big drive. He was still yelling at the ref like 2 or 3 plays later when, a penalty that should have been called that was really quite obvious. Benhart was literally punched in the face by a defensive lineman from Benhart is our right tackle. And he was punched in the face after the play. I mean, he was shoved and his helmet went up and the whole deal. And Benhart is 6'9", kind of hard to miss him. And yet the refs didn't call that. And Scott lost his shit over that because it was so blatant and so obvious.
Right. Well, and that's another one of those that was after the second backup ref had been injured, right? There wasn't somebody right there.
I don't remember if it was before or after that, but the point is we get so screwed on uncalled penalties that would have benefited us, and then we get the interception, penalty. Again, you watch that play, and does he drive that quarterback into the ground a little bit? Yeah, he does. Okay, he does. But again, he didn't hit him high or do anything illegal.
Oh, God.
All he did was tackle him hard.
You should have seen, because at first it was sounding like from what the commentators were saying that it was going to be targeting or like, what do you want to say? Like,
targeting.
Or going high into the opponent. I'm forgetting what that's called.
Right.
And I saw the replay and I was about to like scream my head off because it was like, there's no way that's targeting. He didn't hit his head at all. But then they said it was unnecessary roughness on the,
because he pile drived him into the ground.
Right.
But that's football. Okay.
Right.
And then for a defensive lineman to have a few choice words to say that are taunting, quote, quote, after they have a big tackle that they think is significant, especially after the interception happens as a result, because you rush the quarterback's throw, obviously. I mean, I'm sorry. Those are the kinds of things that are huge momentum swings, and Nebraska has been unfairly the victim of that. And there's something at play. It's so consistent and has been for quite some time. It's a curse. It's officially a curse.
The Nebraska curse.
Yes.
So the final thing I wanted to bring up, and we've still got to talk about Fordham, but final thing about this game is on last week's podcast, when we were talking about Trev Alberts as our new AD and everything, you had said that even if Scott won less than 4 games this year, that there would be no way that he would be fired because Trev Alberts wouldn't do that. He wants to like maintain what he's got, but he would give Scott very strict rules to follow for next year, like expectations he needs to meet.
Right.
But I know that the Nebraska fan base is up in arms about this, and we were the most prominent game on this week 0, so there's been a good bit of national media coverage of this as well, and like, how can Nebraska rebuild from this, et cetera, et cetera. So what is your feeling on that now?
Well, I would acknowledge that maybe I was being a little using a little hyperbole in saying that. I mean, but I guess my point is that if Scott's team shows consistently good effort and is just getting beat by better teams, which a lot of the teams we play this year are just better than us. I mean, they have better talent, they have better coaching, they have better everything right now. So it's not surprising that we would lose those games, right? And I think um, I think that Trev Albers, as a new AD, doesn't want to have to make that decision in his very first year. I think he's going to want to give Scott a chance and an off season with him as the AD to, figure out a path to greater success. And so I'm just inclined to believe that that's what he would do. That's what Trev would do, or that's what he would want to do. Now, if Scott continues to make bonehead comments in the media, um, gives these indications, that there are obviously fights and disagreements among the coaching staff, and the whole thing starts to implode on itself, then Trev may have no choice, right? Like he'll have to do it because Scott will have demonstrated that he's completely lost it, lost control, lost the team, his coaching staff, etc. And the respect isn't there, and so rebuilding from there is untenable and unacceptable. And so then he might pull the trigger and make the change. But otherwise, if there's good effort and stuff, and we just lose, I think he'll give Scott one more year.
Well,
after this one,
I will say, because to me, like, yes, there was effort on the field. Like we talked about those defensive players, that made good plays. There were players that made good individual plays. You could see the team getting hyped up, especially earlier on in the game. But
and even late in the game.
Right, yeah, and like that nice drive that we talked about that brought us within 8 points of Illinois. It wasn't like a blowout or anything. But the problem is that it's looked like a carbon copy of the past few years in terms of like, we're the more talented team. We were playing, better, in terms of our talent and like how much offense we could produce, and how our defense was doing and all that. But then these mistakes and the penalties and the turnovers, and bonehead decisions like the safety and all that, end up costing you the game. And against a team that, you're expected to be better than. I think Nebraska fans can like understand the, like, we're going to get our asses kicked by Oklahoma. We're not going to do well against Michigan. We understand that. But when you lose, it matters how you lose too. If you lose in a respectable way or if you lose in a boneheaded shoot yourself in the foot way. And I think if we keep seeing more of these shoot yourself in the foot sort of defeats, Scott's gone. That's my prediction.
You know what? I would have to say you may be right, and cause I genuinely thought that this would look cleaner. I did. If we lost, I thought we were going to lose because we would have just simply been out matured, for lack of a better term. That they would have just been a team that was just better than us because they were physically men. Because we have a bunch of sixth-year guys starting on the offensive line that should be playing in the NFL if they have the talent, but and our offensive line is young and things of that nature. But yeah, if these kinds of mistakes and everything continue to happen, then I think you might be right. Trev will be forced to kind of make a decision. I just really believe that he doesn't want to do that. That he wants to give Scott a chance and he's obviously observing. So it's going to be really important what happens over the next 4 or 5 weeks. The next 2 weeks, so we can use this as transition. You got Fordham and then Buffalo, 2 teams that you hope we can have some success against. Certainly Fordham this week. If he loses or we struggle against Fordham, then I think Trev's going to be warming up his cell phone for lots of conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Now this is a home game, our first home game of the year, and Fordham is a team in the Patriot League, not particularly well known for their football per se. So this is the easiest team on our schedule. So if we lose here, it's real danger bells are ringing. In your research on what you've looked into about this team, what are you most concerned about from them? What do you think is their biggest weapon?
Well, they were like 4-8 the last year. We played 12 games, and then they had a shortened season last year. They didn't even get a play. I think they only played like 4 games, and maybe they were 1-3. They don't have much of anything. The teams that they lost to, I mean, we're putting 50 points up against them. This is a team that's struggling hugely. Okay, so this is a game that provides no benefit for Nebraska other than that it's a payday for that Fordham program and it's a W for us. But now it will be judged as how bad did you beat them? If we're struggling and Fordham is still in the hunt at halftime, that's going to be viewed as a negative for Nebraska, and the pressure and the booing from the crowd and the expectation from the crowd will be present. It'll be palpable in that stadium. Okay, so Nebraska needs to come out against Fordham and like score, at least 14 points in the first half or first quarter. Maybe another 14 or 21 in the second quarter, and be up by 4 touchdowns at halftime. If they're not, people are going to freak.
All right, so it's one of those kinds of games.
That's what it should be. I don't know
Right.
what it's going to be because God knows how many points we're going to gift them with stupidity.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I certainly hope that, Scott has been, especially on the special team side of things, like really drilling that in, because, yeah, how we performed there in this first game was completely unacceptable. In terms of predictions, I'll go ahead and I'll say that we are going to score quite a few points on them, and that we'll if we're up, we'll put off the gas, later on in the second half. We're not going to like put up, 80 on them or something crazy like that. So I guess I'll say we win 42 for us, and that they get, say, 21. Let's go with that.
And I'm going to say 48-21 we win.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So let's hope.
Because our field goal kicker is going to miss one extra point.
I was going to say you're off by one there. Our all Big Ten kicker. Oh, boy. Yep. And then after this Fordham game is Buffalo, who's another, team in a lesser conference, but they've got some real weapons. So
they do. Buffalo's a whole different deal.
Building confidence and momentum from this victory into that Buffalo game, into the Oklahoma game. That's right. The game plan now. Because I know on the previous podcast you said this Illinois game was not only the most important game of the season, but the most important game of Scott Frost's career at Nebraska thus far. And,
I think it was, and he failed.
It went badly, yeah. So, yes. So the season's off on the wrong foot. Now it's up to Scott to try to right the ship.
Right, and so, like you said, I'm glad you encouraged me to watch it and replay, because I did see a lot of glimpses of promise. And if they could figure out a way to have the team that can do those things consistently play and play clean, then Nebraska would have a chance to right the ship in these next 2 weeks, go down, at least look competitive against Oklahoma, not get the doors blown off you, and then come back and start playing in the Big Ten Conference against Michigan State and Northwestern and Michigan, and that group, and maybe win 2 out of those 3, right? And then all of a sudden, okay, now we've got, 4 or 5 wins, and now we've got to pick off an Iowa or a Minnesota, type of game in the hopes that we can secure a victory that would get us to six wins. I mean, now we're already counting. We're going to have to count at least 1, if not 2 upsets just to get to 6 wins.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's a very high hill to climb.
Yep. It's going to be tough, but hey, we're Nebraska fans. We've been through a lot, and we'll stick with this team here.
That's right. But, we're gonna do that, and we'll cheer hard for them, and hope like heck that these players can continue to work hard and begin to understand the decision making part that is the missing element. The fact that they don't understand some of these basics, I almost feel for them, and it's like I want to go into Scott Frost's office and say, Scott, let me coach the team for a day, and I'm going to cover every frickin' fundamental basic thing I can think of, and get them to understand. Do you guys understand this? You're never going to do this again. This is never going to happen again. This over here, this situation, never going to happen again. Here's how it's supposed to happen. And under no circumstances do you do this, right?
Yep.
And just get a nod from everybody so everybody understands that's the way we play this game.
Yeah. All right. I'll look forward to that, Coach Pete Schmitz.
Yeah, right.
For a day.
That's not going to happen.
It'd be
Not
cool.
going to happen.
All right. Well, if you
I
all
would
out
love
there, yeah, you would. If you all out there enjoyed listening to this podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. If you search for College Football Throwdown, you can leave us a rating or review there. We always love hearing from the fans. We're also now on Spotify, so you can find us there as well. And also on Podomatic.com for those who use that website. So thank you all out there for listening. Thank you, Dad, for joining me for today's episode. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.